Everybody has been muted. And as we wrote, one of the good features, maybe the real feature of the chat, is that somebody has a question you might have, you don't want to forget it, so you can kind of write it in the chat and we can see it afterwards in case you have any comments or questions. I want to say, first of all, again, thank you to everybody for showing up and participating. I think it's a wonderful thing that we've been able to get together, and as we said in the very first session, to do two mitzvot. One is to learn Torah, and the other one is to do it in a way that we protect ourselves. V'nishmartem ma'od l'nafshotechem. Today is my mother's 39th yortzeit, Chaya Fegurachel Vas Yaakov, and not being able to go to shul or say Kaddish, although I'm thankful to Donnie who arranged it at Yeshivat HaKotel. So at least I feel that I can do something special for her in terms of giving a shir show, so her neshama should have an aliyah. Tonight I want to talk to you about the Arba Banim. I know everybody basically knows a lot about the Arba Banim. I hope to offer you some insights that you may never have seen before. And there's a lot to say here. This is a long shir, but I'm condensing it. It's an hour shir I have to condense into a half hour. I'm going to talk very, very rapidly, so please try to listen quickly so that you can pick up on this, and you may have some things to talk about at your Seder, even if it's very individual. So first of all, if you have a Haggadah, so you know that the Arba Banim has its own preamble. It has an introduction, which automatically is an indication of how special this is. Just as we have an introduction for Birkat HaMazon with Shir Malot, Al Narot Bavel, or the Zimun. So the Haggadah gave, just as it does, by the way, to Dayenu, there's also an intro. Some special parts of the Haggadah have an intro, and this has one too, with this little paragraph of Baruch HaMakom. So when you look at it, you see, I want to, first of all, just say a word about the preamble. Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shanatan Torah L'Amo Yisrael, Baruch Hu, Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah, Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Ve'echad Tam, Ve'echad Sheni Yodei Lisho. So right away you see here a number of things. Now, by the way, the Haggadah is not the Torah Misinai. Nevertheless, there's tremendous wisdom in the Haggadah. By the way, the Haggadah is the most printed and produced of all Jewish books. It's a true fact. It sounds maybe a little bit difficult to believe, but if you think about it, think of how many Haggadot you have in your house. Many more than Chumashim, more than your Sidurim. The only thing that might come close perhaps is a bencher. And we probably have too many of those, as we know. But the Haggadot coming out every single year with dozens of new commentaries and insights into the Haggadah, tremendous wisdom throughout the Haggadah. Nobody should think that it's just, put together haphazardly. So I think the section of the Arba Banim in particular has tremendous wisdom and lessons for life. So we begin with the Baruch HaMakom, and we see already two unusual things. First of all, we see that, and you can all kind of, mouth this. I'm not listening, you're muted, but I want you to really join along with me. So you see already in the preamble two or three interesting things. First of all, we are repeating a word. What is the word that we're repeating? The first word, we're repeating the word Baruch. Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shanatan Torah, Baruch Hu. Clearly, the Balei Haggadah, those who wrote the Haggadah, they were not writing this haphazardly. They were writing the word Baruch 4 times as the preamble to indicate something I think is quite obvious, that every child, again, we'll see that this may not necessarily be 4 children, but the 4 individuals we're talking about, everyone is Baruch. Everyone is blessed. And this is similar to what we do in Pirkei Avot when we say, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelek L'Olam Haba. We have a preamble that says, don't worry, whatever we're going to say here, you're still blessed. You're still part of the community. Hashem still loves you. So the word Baruch is repeated 4 times. Also repeated 4 times is another word here. Anybody see the other word that's repeated 4 times? Okay, you can wave your hand and give a sign. You see the repeated 4 times as well is the word echad, right? We could have said, Keneged arba banim dibra Torah, Chacham Rasha Tam Sheni Delisho, but we said echad to indicate two important things. The first is that every person or child certainly is an individual, is echad, is different than every other child that we may have. Everyone has a singular personality. And secondly, the word echad, of course, is a reference to Hashem, Hashem echad. So indicating here as well that Hashem has a relationship with every single one of us, certainly with every child, that everyone has this is our task in life, to create a relationship, to forge a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he is echad, and we are echad in that sense. The other thing I want to point out just about the preamble, even before we get into the Arba Banim, is this phrase, Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. If we were writing this, we probably would not have used that phraseology. Zahava, you probably would have written, Al Arba Banim Dibra Torah, or anyone with, modern Hebrew. Keneged is a very powerful word. And the word keneged really has two meanings. As we know, Ezer Kenegdo, it has a double phraseology, right? Your wife can be a help, or she can be kenegdecha, kenegdo. But here we see two things. Number one, the word keneged means literally opposite. And that's telling us that in dealing with our children or in dealing with other human beings, it's very important to be keneged, to be opposite them, to have this eye-to-eye, one-on-one opportunity to reach them, as opposed to doing it in an anonymous way. And at the age of technology, we often lose that important quality of this keneged, of sitting opposite someone, of being involved in the body language and the eyes, and really getting to know them, keneged. The other is keneged arba banim has a certain negative connotation, and that is that it's something we're against. Just like we said, if you're the right husband, your wife will be an ezer. But if you're not, she will be neged. She will tell you, as certainly as my wonderful wife often does, get a life, do the things you need to do, straighten up, fly right, etc. So here we're indicating keneged arba banim, and this is the clue. There is indeed something that needs some tikkun, some rectification that needs to be done on about each of these banim, and that's what we're working on. We start with the chacham. Chacham mahu omer, ma ha'idut v'chukim v'mishpatim, etc. How do we know he's a chacham? Well, we don't just take it for granted. We know he's a chacham very simply because he knows the difference between edot, chukim, and mishpatim. I'm not going to ask for a raising of hands, but we would all be hard-pressed to know what he knows and know the difference between edot, chukim, and mishpatim. But I'll just give you a little crash course. Edot are basically from the word aid. These are historical events that we witness in reference to Pesach. We might say matzah. It's a mitzvah that gives edut about what happened in this period. Chukim are mitzvot, the reason for which is not currently known. Doesn't mean it doesn't have a reason. It has a reason, we don't know it. There are many of those related to Pesach as well. For example, that the korban Pesach has to be roasted. Why? Let's broil it. Let's boil it. No, the Torah tells us to roast it. That's a chok. We don't know why. Mishpatim are logical laws, and that would be, for example, kol arel lo yochal bo, that if you're somebody who was such a person can't eat the korban Pesach, he's not really part of the body politic of Israel. So the chacham knows all this. And he says, he wants to know what are the edot. It's kind of a nebulous question. Has nothing to do with Pesach, it seems. What are the edot, chukim, and mishpatim? Asher tzivah Hashem Elokeinu etchem. So what is va'afata amor lo ki hilchot Pesach ein maftir nachar Pesach hafikomen? Now we don't really know what's going on with him from his question, but from the answer we may be able to divulge what is the problem with the chacham. He's great. He's a chacham. He knows it all. However, there's something that still needs work. You can learn this, and perhaps you can sense this just from one letter here that's really unnecessary. that the Balei Haggadah threw in as a clue, because they say to him, and Morlo, Ke Hilchot Pesach. You have to say to him something like the laws of Pesach. Not, why doesn't it say Morlo Hilchot Pesach? But it says Ke Hilchot Pesach, telling us something that has to do with Pesach. And I will suggest what that is in a moment. One, this answer, again, he doesn't seem to ask anything about Pesach, but the answer is very mysterious. Don't eat anything after the Karban Pesach at the end of the Seder. What does that answer? What does that do? So some want to suggest, since that's the last mission of Pesachim, so tell him, keep learning and learn all the way through. And since we're dealing with Pesach now, you have to continue studying 100%. I want to suggest something else. I want to suggest that what is the reason for that halacha at the end of Pesachim? The reason Chazal tell us is that the taste of the Karban Pesach should remain in your mouth long after the Seder. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. You can be a chacham. You can get straight A's in Gemara and in Tanakh, as many of our kids do. And yet, it's mysteriously or strangely enough, unfortunately, we find with many of our kids, certainly this is true in Israel, I'm sure it's true worldwide, they can be excellent in their studies, but somehow they lose interest in Judaism. And some are often prone to go off the derech, as we say. And so what the Haggadah is telling us, that what's sometimes most important, especially regarding children, is when you close the Sefer, when you close the Gemara, what is the taste left in your mouth? What is the time you have afterwards? Is it positive? Is it saying, I did something really good today? I feel really good about being Jewish, about learning, about doing mitzvot? That's the key. And that's what we're worried about with the Chacham. It's not enough simply to be super intelligent or well-versed if you're not going to have that feeling and that attraction to Yiddishkeit. Next, we go to the Russia. If you just look at the text of the Russia, you don't have to do much else. You see it's the biggest text, because the Russia, who I would define as rebellious, not evil, is the most challenging, perhaps, of all the Arba Banim. And as we know, our kids who are rebellious, they're very, very bright, and they're the most difficult to deal with. There are actually 42 words in this section of the Russia. I sometimes say 42 in Gematria is bum, the Dibarta bum. You have to really talk to these kids, these people. And the Russia only says 4 words, Maha Avodah Zot Lachem. And we jump all over him. And we give him all kinds of semi-curses. We want to knock out his teeth. We want to tell him you wouldn't have been redeemed. Why? What does he say? Ma avodah zod lachem. The word avodah, which is clearly what we pick up on, avodah is not necessarily a negative word. What does the Kohen Gadol do in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur? He does the avodah. Avodah can be a positive word. But here, the parent senses there's something else going on here. He doesn't mean it positively. I want to suggest, by the way, it seems to me, the fact that you have in Chacham in Russia another extraneous word that doesn't belong here, right? And I'm giving you all these answers, otherwise I would have you guess if I had more time. But what doesn't belong here? It says in both of them, it says va'af. Va'af doesn't seem to belong there. Va'af ataomer. I want to suggest that the word af literally means nose. And what I think the Balei Haggadah are saying, sniff out who you're dealing with. A good parent, 2 kids can say the same statement, but a parent knows which one is being sincere and which one is being cynical. And here we sense that the Russia is being cynical, where he says, what is all this work you're doing? And then we give him all these answers. We go on, into a kind of rant and tirade about him. V'afatak had shinav. Some want to say knock his teeth out, be really rough. Some others want to be a little gentler and say haked shinav. Maybe it means not to be so blunt as to say I'm going to knock your teeth out if you don't, toe the line. But maybe we're saying that shinav shin nun from the word vishinantam, education. You've got to give him a really strong, good education. And if he lacks that education, he may turn out this way to be a rebel. But I want to. There's a lot to say, really, about the so-called Russia or rebel. But I want to say one main thing, which is really a theme of Pesach, and which is really, I think, a lesson that we all have to learn for ourselves and for kids. We say to the Russia, because of this, let's not even get into what the this means. Hashem did this for me when I left Egypt. Leave a low. This makes no sense. What do you mean leave a low? It should say this is what God did for me and not for you. But it doesn't say that. It says leave a low. This is what God did for me and not for him. What do you mean him? Some want to suggest maybe you stop talking to him. Then maybe you talk to the other kids and you kind of give him the silent treatment, which can be very, very powerful and very hurting to a child to pretend like the child doesn't exist. But I have another take on what I think this strange, and you can ask a million people this question who say that God every year. What does it mean, leave a low? He's talking to him. He should have said, leave a low lecha. Doesn't say that. I want to suggest that what is the issue with the Russia? What is his thing going on? The Russia, he's extremely bright. He looks at and he sees all the work being done for Pesach and all the preparation, mostly by his mother probably, mostly by the women in the house. And I have a picture, I'm not going to show it in the interest of time, that shows all the women working and the Rebbe sitting learning. But it's very, for the Me Too generation, it's great. But in any case, he sees all this work being done and he says, I don't know what's going on here. What did you gain? We were slaves to Paro in Egypt. We slaved away and worked for Paro. And then Hashem took us out. He freed us and he made us a nation. And then guess what? He gave us even more rules to follow, even more things obligations that we had to do, even more than Paro. What did we gain? We traded one master for another. It's a brilliant question that the Russia has. But we are also brilliant as parents, and we have an answer for him. And we say to him, you know what? You're right. We do work for Hashem. We're not avadim la'avadim, but we're avdei Hashem. But there is a difference between when we worked for Paro and when we worked for Hashem. When we worked for Paro, everything we did went to Paro. But when we do mitzvot and we study Torah, all the things, and we keep chagim, all the things we do, you know who the beneficiary is? Li, the low. It's for us and not for Hashem. The low is Hashem here. And we're telling the Russia, do you see the difference? Whatever you're doing, you're not doing it for someone else. You're doing it for yourself. If you keep Shabbos, who is the beneficiary? It's not God. You're the beneficiary. If you keep any of the chagim, you build a sukkah, you have a Seder Pesach, do you know who is benefiting by that? Li, the low. And that can make all the difference in the world. You convince a child or any other person that we're doing this at the end of the day, we are the ones who benefit by it. And that's the answer. And that's the approach we have to have for any child or for anybody who wants to be Jewish, is to say to them, this is not something that we're out there simply to please God for God's own sake. He's not going to be a greater God because we do a mitzvah. Well, we're going to be a greater person because we do a mitzvah. Next, we come to the Tam. Well, the Tam, of course, it's not, a long preamble or a long statement. Tam mahu omer mazot. He doesn't say very much. And a lot of people and a lot of Haggadot mistranslate Tam. And they want to say, he's simple. He's a simpleton. But this is clearly not who we're talking about as a Tam, because Tam is not a negative word. Who is a Tam in the Torah? So first of all, we know that Yaakov, Ish Tam Yoshev Olim. We know about Noach, Tamim Haya B'dorotav. That clearly is a compliment. Tam is not a negative person. Tam is let us say, perhaps on the way. Some want to suggest that Tam, even the letters Tav Mem, kind of stand for Talmid Chacham, that begins with the Tav and ends with a Mem, that the Tam is, in a sense, a Chacham in training. He wants to do the right thing, but he doesn't really know. He's uninitiated. So he says, Mazot. And what do we answer him? B'chozek yad hotzianu Hashem miMitzrayim miBeit Avadim. We simply say to him, B'chozek yad, it's with a strong hand, God took us out of slavery and out of Egypt. But the idea perhaps of B'chozek yad is a sense of discipline. As the old joke says, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. You have to discipline. If you have someone who has the desire perhaps or the potential of being a chacham, then clearly the only way to do it, to get him there, is to discipline him and to start that training of everything that we need to learn in order to ultimately say we're a Talmid Chacham. We're still learning if we're a Talmid Chacham. Obviously, we're a Talmid, but we've been able to make that move from Tam to Chacham. Finally comes the Sheni Yodei Lisho. And interestingly enough, the Sheni Yodei Lisho, by definition, he doesn't say anything. He asks nothing. But he's still there. He's one of the Arba Bani. People have always said that the most tragic is the fifth child who doesn't show up for the Seder at all. And we know, thank God, that the Seder is something people come to. In Israel, upwards of 85% of the population, the Jewish population, attends or hosts a Seder. It's an amazing statistic that indicates that there is a certain attraction, mystical attraction of Leil HaSeder. So he's there. He doesn't ask anything, and he's not dumb. No Jewish child is stupid. That's other Haggadot that want to say, oh, he's just unintelligent. There's no such thing. No Jewish parent ever said their kid was dumb. And so he's not. But he has another problem. And I would say in a nutshell, he is apathetic. And apathy is one of the great detriments or one of the great negative motivators that we have in Jewish life. To be apathetic. You can cure ignorance. Apathy is much more difficult to cure. And look at what we answer to the Sheni Yodei Lisho. We give him essentially the same answer that we gave to the Rasha. So we're very harsh with him because we are afraid, I suggest, that just as the Tam was a Chacham in the making, so a Sheni Yodei Lisho is a Rasha in the making. If we don't do something to take him off that path and get him somehow involved, somehow interested. So you see, perhaps suggested what the tikkun is for him. First of all, at petachlo. First of all, we're using a lashon nekeva. We're saying, take a mother's approach. That maybe for him, whereas with the Tam, you have to have chosek yad, maybe with him, it has to be a gentler approach. A mother's approach with a kind of love. And that is indicated by the Lashon Nekeva. Also the letters At. They're interesting. Aleph and Tav. And some want to say, you have to try everything with a Sheni Yodei Lisho from Aleph to Tav. And it's not easy. This is the toughest nut to crack, in a way, is to conquer that apathy. I want to suggest that it's also hidden here, maybe one approach. Ba'avur zeh. Ba'avur zeh always in the Torah means a practical illustration of what you should be doing, something that is not simply descriptive, but something you actually do. You point to something and say, Zeh. Hashem said this about the menorah, said it about the machzit hashekel. Zeh. This is what I want you to do. Being somehow experiential. The greatest way to overcome apathy is experience. You can take a kid who's totally turned off about Pesach, for example, he doesn't want to hear about matzah and chametz and Moriah and carbon Pesach. It doesn't interest him. You take that same kid, put on a baker's hat, and get him to a matzah factory, as many shuls here, certainly in Israel, and I'm sure elsewhere, run, and have him bake his own matzah. You've never seen a kid so excited to bring home some, basically inedible, mess of food and show his parents, look what I made. I made a matzah. Really? What's a matzah? And it'll tell you the history of matzah. It's experiential. If you get somebody, this is my years in NCSY, I learned, time and time again, you don't talk to kids about Shabbos. You make a Shabbaton, you get them there to experience a Shabbos, and the rest is history. They have a completely, like driving a car. Don't just explain it. Get out there in the car and start driving. It's a whole different experience than learning about what every single item in the car does and stands for. So that, I think, is the approach for the Sheni Yodei Lishol. I want to just sum up with just a couple of general ideas. One is that that clearly we're not necessarily talking about 4 different children or individuals. I want to suggest that at some point in our lives, all of us represent these 4 types. Sometimes we are the chacham. Sometimes we are filled with knowledge, filled with a quest for knowledge and a desire for spirituality, as hopefully the chacham is. Sometimes we're the rasha. We're rebellious. We're cynical. We're in doubt, and we're not sure, why are we doing this? Sometimes we are the tam. We're overwhelmed by it all, and we feel, where can I go with this? How can I bridge the gaps? And then sometimes we're the Sheni Yodei Lishol. We lose interest. We're apathetic. We're uninvolved. Perhaps we're ignorant and want to stay that way. So all of us, to some extent, can represent these 4 types. Finally, I want to just end with the beautiful, beautiful idea that was given by not the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, but the one before, who had come to America. And he looked at these Arba Banim, and he said, I see this as 4 generations. I see the generation that first came to America as the Chacham. He knew what it was to make a Seder. He knew what it was to say Kiddush on Shabbos and Yantif. He was the Chacham. But then he had a son or a child, and that child became rebellious, in a sense, the Rasha, and didn't want to have anything to do with that. He saw this generation that he wanted to fit into America. He wanted to, be more American than the Americans. And he rebelled against everything his father stood for. And then comes the Tam. He's got a grandfather who he sometimes goes to, who's a Chacham. His father's a rebel. And all he can say is mazot. I don't know. I see Zadie and Bubby one way. I see mom and dad completely another way. Mazot. I don't know what to do. And that comes to the next is the Sheni Yodei Lishol. His grandfather's great-grandfather's probably not around. His grandfather is the rebel. His father doesn't know he doesn't know what to do. And so he is completely lost. Said the Rebbe, though, he said, that's not the end of the cycle. Because he said there will come a time when following the Sheni Yodei Lishol will come again the Chacham. Will come a generation that says, I want to know more. I want to be like my great-grandfather that I really don't know at all. And he said that's what the 5th generation will produce. And that's exactly what happened in America, is that suddenly there was this burst of Balei Tshuva who came from nothing. And not only came from nothing, but came from many who were anti-religious and who went against the grain and said, I want to be more like the Chacham. And therefore, he said, there's always hope that no matter what is happening in any particular generation, that ultimately we stick to it And there's the chance that even if for some reason a child goes off the derech, the next generation will turn out to be the chacham. So I hope that this gives a little bit of insight into some of the wisdom and some of the lessons for life. And there is much, much more, and I'm sure everybody is thinking already as I'm talking about many more insights into the beautiful idea of the Arba Banim. And certainly, even if we're alone at the Seder, we have a lot to talk about and decide where we fit in and what lessons the Arba Banim have for us. So we're going to unmute, and anybody wants to have a comment or question or say whatever you want. And hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, we'll have a wonderful Pesach when we get there.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to comment or give their own take on anything in the Arba Banim, this is a good time for the last few minutes if you feel like it.
Well, I got a present for my wedding called Haggada and History. And it's pretty funny how they portray the Russia in various generations. You have a Haggada that has the Russia as a guy with a cigar in his mouth, and he's reading the racetrack results. That was what I remember as a child that we had to show what the Russia looked like. And in different periods of history, the Russia was a guy who was the snitch to the government, you know. So who would be the Russia today? Would that be politicians, maybe? So who qualifies for that role? So it's interesting how they are portrayed in different Haggadahs over the years. But you know, we view as the Russia that we have to overcome.
Yeah. Good point. Anybody else want to add anything?
Anybody has a TV on? Stuart?
Yes.
Stuart?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. I hear some radio on or something else.
I know. Someone has a TV or a radio on.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
I wanted to, first of all, the shiur was wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm just, very depressing that we'll have these 4 sons with us, but we won't have any of our own sons and daughters with us.
Yeah, you're quite right. There has been a suggestion. It's a couple of things. We, in our house, we usually, because we do, generally speaking, we do a Pesach program. We can't, unfortunately, do it this year. But the day before, we usually have a model or a mock Seder. But someone suggested, and I think we're going to do this, at the very least, get everybody on Zoom and sing the songs of the Seder. Because that's, everybody loves the songs. And at least do that as a family, even if you can't be together for the whole Seder, and not eating the food, but sing the songs. I think it's a beautiful way to at least pre-Seder be together with our families and in a very upbeat way by singing the songs. So something for you to think about.
We're going to be thrown out in 1 minute and 23 seconds.
Okay. It's been a pleasure, and thank you to everybody for joining into the different
you. Thank you.
And hopefully it'll take us close to Pesach.